Okay, now we're ready. We're back and running. Thank you, Rob and Kristen and whomever else worked on this. First of all, our President Rintz is a bit under the weather, so I'm pinch hitting for him tonight. And for the regular meeting of the Winnetka Village Council, December 17th, 2024, we'll call the meeting to order. Please mute your cell phones, other electronic devices. And I'll ask Manager Bayhan to do a roll call for attendance.
Thank you. Trustee Apatow?
Here.
Trustee Orsic?
Here.
Trustee Handler?
Here.
Trustee Dearborn?
Here.
Trustee Albinson?
Here.
Thank you. And I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. I pledge allegiance. Okay, Rob, do you want to check for quorums for the January meetings?
Yes. Any conflicts for January, the 7th, 14th, and the 21st meetings?
Go ahead, Bob.
I'll be out on the 21st.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure. The 10th, I may be teaching down in Miami.
The
10th. Whatever that second,
The
14th,
14th,
excuse me, yes.
14th,
But I
okay.
can go remote if I need
Okay,
to.
you're looking at remote. Trustee Dearborn, are you looking at remote?
I'm out.
You're out, okay. Okay. All right, any other conflicts, let me know as we get into January. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to public comment. And I'll ask if anyone is in the audience that would like to speak about an item not on tonight's agenda. Come on up, Ted.
So actually, I wanted to also speak on the consent agenda item, but you don't usually take comments for that, so I'm just going to kind of blend them together. So I may go slightly over. Oops, wrong. Oh, that's good enough. Hi, I'll say Ted Winichenko. So, yeah, there you go. Anyway, so, I sat through most of the zoning board meetings for the Park District, and, I was struck by a couple things as I sat there and listened. I think the one thing that struck me most disappointingly in comparing the Park District to the Village is the fact that at least the Park District pretends to have a public interest at heart. I disagree that they do, and I think that there's stuff we don't know, but regardless, they're still trying to develop public land in some way that they say is going to somehow benefit the public. On the contrary, the Village clearly doesn't care. Right? So we've talked about the street end beaches, the fact that they've been closed for all these years and have gotten more and more restrictive for no reason. And, people talk about how they want the governing bodies to interact and how any one of those locations could be perfect for a dog beach, but there's no communication about that. At Fisher Lane, the homeowners to the south of that, after the homeowners to the north installed a huge breakwater, which has completely started to erode that street end, the homeowners to the south wanted to install a equally large groyne to the south. And that would essentially make a small little area where Fisher Lane would come out. And just like the southern part of 205 Sheridan, over time that would be completely gone. And the Village doesn't care, because the Village was, this was brought to the Village's attention before it went up to IDNR, before it had public comment, and Shabika says, they talked about it with Mr. Bernal, the Village of Winnetka, and he's okay. The Village finds the design acceptable. Okay, so why does the Village find a design that would completely isolate that tiny little roadway, get rid of all the sand, acceptable? It shouldn't. It shouldn't find it acceptable for the Village as a whole. Perhaps it finds it acceptable for the owners that want to privatize their beach. And that brings me back, and it's ongoing, right? So the sidewalk, right? So here we are again. It's been 6 months. You guys are still. So there were 2 meetings where the Village in secret, and it did in secret, and there are emails that show that staff knew that a decision had been made to sell the sidewalk before it was ever been publicly discussed. There are emails that say that very thing. At the last 6-month review, you guys released apparently the April 12th, 2022 closed minutes, but they're not on the website. I guess people have to then FOIA them to actually see them. But yet, the real meeting, the September 21st, 2021 meeting, where the decision was made to sell that land without any public input, without any public knowledge, those remain closed. And why? I mean, I know there might have been more than one thing discussed, and I know I've gone a little bit over, but I'm almost done. There might have been more than one thing discussed, but you can certainly unseal the meeting minutes that relate to the setting of a price for a piece of property which the village no longer owns, right? Why would that have to be secret now? You gave the stuff away at cost. The village didn't get anything for it. Why would and those meeting minutes, those are washed, right? Those are scrubbed. They can say whatever looks best. So I have to believe that even in their scrubbed version, the village is embarrassed or ashamed or perhaps worried that something would come out that would show the impropriety of that sale.
Thank you, Ted. And it's not our practice to comment on public comment, but I would like our village attorney to maybe clarify the issue on the closed meeting minutes that you referenced.
Yeah, and I think Ted referenced this, that those minutes, the council has determined that those minutes continue to contain confidential information that they are not comfortable releasing to the public, related to this thing and related to other matters within those minutes. And the village and the Open Meetings Act does not require that the village start redacting or separating out different things. That's been the village's policy without exception, as far as anybody knows. So there was nothing improper. There was nothing suspect about any of those activities, but that's why the council has continued to maintain the confidentiality of those minutes.
May I take a few seconds?
Just a second, Ted. We don't want to go back and forth on this.
I feel like, because that's.
Okay, go ahead.
So, the OMA doesn't require anything, right? The OMA is a construct, just like the FOIA is, for open and honest government. The village can choose to share things. They don't have to. They're not required by law to. But if we are interested in open and honest government, then the village can choose to make these things available.
Okay.
The fact that you choose not to speaks volumes.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment on items not on the agenda? Okay, we will move on then to reports, and we'll start with trustees. Trustee Albinson?
No report.
Trustee Handler?
No report.
Trustee Orsic?
Quick report. We had the Red Center Board of Directors meeting on December 9th, and the new executive director, Jason Rogers, has taken over, and everybody is extremely happy. Some of the people on the board had stopped by the center and said the mood is completely different. Morale is high. People are very happy about that. They also are looking into a new body to do payroll, because the Village of Northbrook has been doing payroll all these years, but now they are concerned that by doing payroll, people could be considered an employee, even if they're not, even if there are employees. So they have been looking at other ways to do that and have signed an agreement with pay.com, but at the same time, they are sending back the representative from the Village of Northbrook to discuss it again, because costs will go up for everyone, including Northbrook, if they switch to that. And then they're promoting a new operations manager. They interviewed 6 people internally. They are making an offer to 1. And that's all of the
Great.
main gist of the meeting.
Great report. Thank you. Trustee Apatow?
No report tonight.
Village Attorney? No report tonight. I do not have a report. Village Manager?
Just briefly, Mr. Winnichenko had mentioned about Fisher Lane, and I actually had talked about any number of things during our weekly staff meeting. And that particular project is following the prescribed lakefront construction ordinance. There's an initial consult with the village, then it goes to the agencies, and there isn't a formal permit application into the village at this time until we have the agencies weigh in. The way it was represented is not factual.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. We'll move on to the establishment of the consent agenda. Does any trustee wish to remove any items on the consent agenda for a separate vote? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
And that's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed. We'll move on to approval of the consent agenda. Rob, if you could go through the agenda.
Approval of the village council minutes for December 3rd, 2024, regular meeting. Approval of the warrant list dated November 29th, 2024 through December 12th, 2024 in the amount of $1,472,777.09. Resolution number R89, 2024, approving closed session minutes, determining the need to keep minutes of certain closed meetings of the village council confidential, and authorizing the destruction of verbatim recordings of certain closed meetings of the village council. Resolution number R90, 2024, approving a contract with Northern Divers USA for dredging services at the electric plant. Resolution number R91, 2024, approving funding authorizations and change order number 3 to the contract with Maple Construction Incorporated for directional boring work. Resolution number R92, 2024, approving an extension and renewal of an agreement with Prescient Development Incorporated for information technology support services. Resolution number R93, 2024, waiving bidding, improving a purchase of software licenses from Tyler Technologies Incorporated. And resolution number R94, 2024, approving Nicholas Nari to the Illinois Municipal Electric Agency Board of Directors.
That was a mouthful. Thank you, Rob. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second.
And that's a roll call vote?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. Now we'll move on to agenda item 8, ordinances and resolutions. And we'll start with ordinance number M18, 2024, an ordinance granting a variation from the Winnetka zoning ordinance to allow the construction of an addition to an existing residence within the B2 single-family residential district, and that's 270 Birch Street. And this is for discussion and up for adoption. At the December 3rd, excuse me? Okay. At the December 3rd council meeting, council reviewed a request to allow construction of a one-story attached garage to the existing residence. As part of introduction of the ordinance, the applicant was recommended to reduce the garage to a two-car garage with revised plans for council consideration at tonight's meeting. Community Development Director David Schoen will review the item.
Yes, so as Trustee Dearborn said, at your last meeting, you reviewed a 3-stall garage of approximately 790 square feet. It was a side-loaded garage with the doors facing the interior of the lot. I'm on slide 3, if those are for those of you who may be following along. And at that meeting, the council requested that the applicant look at reducing the garage to a 2-stall garage. So moving on to slide 4, the applicant has submitted revised plans. They're now proposing a 2-stall garage that's highlighted in yellow on that site plan that you have, and the garage would be approximately 600 square feet. As revised, the garage addition would provide a front yard setback of 26.38 feet. As you may recall, the minimum is 50. The front yard setback that they're proposing now would increase by approximately 10 feet from what you reviewed at your December meeting. Then on slide 5, there's some images of the revised design, elevations, and floor plan. And so tonight, the council is to consider adoption of the ordinance approving the requested variation. Are there any questions? And the applicant is here this evening to further elaborate on what they have presented tonight.
Any questions for David? David, I have one question. There's no sidewalk in front of this property, correct?
Yeah, that's what I recall.
And so what's the distance from would you say, the curb from the street to the garage? Because it's 26 and a half feet from the property line, but the property line is probably 15 feet from the street or so?
Yeah, I'd say 12 to 15 feet.
So 38 to 40 feet off the street? Okay, and no sidewalk? Okay. No questions for David?
The current garage is more more than 50 feet, the setback? Or
Yes.
is it at 50, the current, I mean, the way it currently stands?
I would have to look. I don't recall that off the top of my head. It's more than 50 feet.
More, okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's more than 50.
Would the applicants like to make any further comments? Thank you.
So we had sort of a complication from when we submitted this, unfortunately. We found out that our architect had plotted a giant heritage beech tree incorrectly, a tree that we said all along we had no interest in losing. And if we leave it there, which we plan to, we can't make the turn into that first bay that's drawn closest to the house. So I don't know what you guys are looking at, if that's shown or not. We found this out about 2 days ago. So we're in a tough situation, and we're kind of looking to you guys for some guidance, because if we go to a 2-car garage, the first bay will not be usable for us.
A quick question, what if you, I'm putting myself in your shoes, I've
Yeah.
had a rehab houses as well.
Yes.
And it was so much fun. But if you want to keep that, I went over and I looked at the HVAC coming down, and I understand, I've had a retrofit as well. If you brought the garage, if we gave you relief to bring the garage 8 feet, 10 feet this way, just straight out, you could rechange the roof line, but you'd have a much bigger garage.
Coming forward,
Coming
not.
forward.
So that would make a huge difference if we could also go, let's say, I don't know, 2 feet to the north. I don't know, when you were there, I don't know if you took note, but there's a unit on the side of the garage that feeds the mini split in the space above. And that's part of the tightness of that garage, is that the mini split impedes.
There's nowhere to put the mini split, is there? Or
What'd you say?
Is there any place else to,
No, I really did not want it in the garage, so
Oh.
there's not another place for it.
so 2 feet toward the
So
nail
we'd have to
ons?
have also a 2-foot variance towards the house just to the north of us, Frank Nalen's house.
What is it, what's the,
I'm confused about that, because if you came straight out, how
no,
could
they're
you?
looking for another one.
Well, yeah, I
coming
guess
straight out, but also
if we
getting
came
2
straight out
feet.
the full depth to avoid that mini split system, we could do it, but it would be way more than what you're proposing. I think you said just a few feet to avoid the unit in the center. Is that what you were proposing?
Yeah, I was, instead, I said 8. I think if you're 52 feet away, even if you came out 8 feet,
Yeah.
you'd still be at 46 feet away from,
44, but
And have
44.
a 2-car garage with,
say 52?
So
Okay.
I don't
Yeah,
I don't
45.
know the measurements off the top of my head, but where that mini split system lives is not in the back corner. It's towards the front of the garage. So I think we'd need more than 8 feet to fit 2 cars in there comfortably, unless we gained a little bit of space on the north side. I'm absolutely willing to consider it, and we came tonight knowing that we might not have a resolution on this, unfortunately. I think what we were thinking of as a proposed option is if we did a 2.5-car garage, so it's not the full 3, then we could clear the beech tree, and that would just be storage or, whatever it is, and then we could get the clearance into the 2 cars. And actually, your point about the not having a sidewalk, it does pull the house further back, which I think helps. But again, we went through this last time and the time before. I know it's a complicated situation.
So can you explain again the beech tree?
Yeah.
So you come off of Birch,
Yeah, so if you're on Birch and you turn into the first curb split,
yeah,
right in front of those 2 round windows, there's a huge heritage beech tree.
Yeah.
And it just was misplotted. It was plotted to be much further south than it is, and had it been where our architect plotted it, you would have made the clearance into that first bay, no problem. But unfortunately,
this is newly planted?
no,
no, you
newly
very-
plotted.
It just wasn't properly
It was
put on
incorrectly
there.
plotted.
I see.
Yeah.
How, what's the side setback? Are you right on the side setback?
Yeah.
Is it
I
12?
think
Is it 12?
It's 12,
Yeah.
and I think we're right on 12. Yeah. Sorry, I wish this
No,
was
no,
like
it's
a
not that. I'm just
no-brainer.
trying to figure a solution. I'm just trying
Yeah,
to
I
figure
know,
it.
I still go back to the idea, I mean, again, we're all not architects, but retaining your garages is, and then you have this whole other side of your property to the south to build
I hear you. I mean,
another,
and I know
another
we-
structure that isn't the one that you access every day with groceries and things, but still would certainly be a nice functional garage. It seems like that would give you 3 bays if you could do
Yeah,
something like that.
if we built something on the south side,
South
we could
side,
do we could do like a garage and a half so that we could have some storage out of it. I think what truly is just important to me is just trying to retain the architectural integrity
Yeah,
of the
I-
house, which this just doesn't do. And also just not building just because it's buildable. Like I hate feeling like the house stretches the entire length of the property. I think that's such a outdated aesthetic, and it might be our only option, and I understand that. It's just, we're really trying to avoid it.
I have, if they're not coming that heavily toward the street, I have much less of a problem. If a solution is to build it out where it
To just
is
expand
workable,
and do it.
expand it, and I'm not sure, I'm not sure about breaking side setbacks either, but,
What's that?
no, right now they're right at the 12-foot side setback.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know
think
if
we'd
that's
have
a
to know
problem
those
or not.
numbers. David, we'd have to know if they move 2 feet to the north, if that's a 2-foot variance.
I think at this point.
From code.
This is the first I'm learning
Yeah.
of the beech tree issue.
Yeah.
And I think the thing would be to bring this back to you at a future meeting. We work with the applicant on what their options are and what relief may be necessary. For instance, if we don't put it in the rear quarter of the yard on the south side, they will need a side yard setback because the side yard setback is much greater on that side because of our average setback requirements. So
If you put it in the rear quarter of the property, the side setback doesn't apply?
it's smaller.
Oh.
Yeah, but then you have a super lot with
Yeah.
your lot, but, so anyway, I think the next thing would be, you could continue this to a date certain, or we just bring it back when the applicant's ready to present an alternative, and we'll work with the applicant on those.
I'd like to give them some direction.
That's why I would love to not just go back to the drawing
Right.
board, like we've drawn so many things,
Yeah.
trying to make it work. And, you know, we're moving in 2 weeks, and we understand we're gonna be living through construction regardless,
Yeah.
because wherever the garage gets built, there'll be construction. But I would love to leave here at least with, like, okay, if you draw this, this will be approved, or at least on the road to being
we can't
approved. I
say
know you
that.
can't, yes, no, I know, but at least, like, we have a chance. You know, if you guys, like, last time we left the meeting, we felt like, okay, if we go back and we draw this 2-car garage, we're in good shape. It meets, everybody feels good about it. And obviously, we didn't account for this mistake. So if we said, like, you know, extending it 8 feet, extending it 8 feet and
Kirk? you have-
If I may, and I'm going to say what I'm guessing others might be thinking. I looked at this before you came up tonight, said, okay, this is fine relative to our last meeting discussion. When I hear about the tree, it's unfortunate, and I'll echo the comments made the last meeting that I think everything was done very tastefully, in keeping with the architecture of the house in terms of trying to keep it more appearing without the garage doors facing the street. The general feeling I have right now is, though, that these aren't necessarily hardships
yeah.
that are justifying the significant variance that's being requested. And I think the suggestion to re-examine having 2 garage doors facing the street, even if it comes, and I, you don't want to hear this, but I know you know it, right? That you went ahead with the construction and you impacted part of the buildable area
Yeah.
isn't necessarily a hardship.
Yeah.
So, right, whether it's revising your existing newly or recently constructed area of the house to accommodate a 2-car front-facing garage that doesn't have as significant of an impact on the variance or the setback,
Yeah.
that would be my general feeling. But unless we have specific drawings to look at, I can't, and I doubt we can in good faith, give you a nod of approval or a conditional approval without actually seeing specifics.
Yeah, that's fair.
I get, I'd be more willing, I think it solves a couple things, but not exactly perfectly what you want, but keeping your roof line, keeping you coming in that door, which is, I think, the kitchen next door to it, coming forward, it still means you'd be 40-something feet away from, is that where you're going with that too? Coming straight on the existing garage? Or am I
General reaction, because you look at the plan, there's a lot of space available.
Yeah.
If it's a front-facing two-car garage,
Yeah.
the existing structure and the work that was done doesn't constitute a hardship. It's an inconvenience of a cost already spent, and we're trying to be as accommodating as possible to the applicant. But I worry a little bit about setting precedent about folks getting ahead of themselves, doing work, and then trying to get around it by asking for variances.
I do want to
That's
just
an excellent
remind,
point,
though,
Kurt.
that we did not want to apply for this variance separately than the rest of our permit. We had to do it because of the LOMA. We wanted to submit this with everything
Understood.
else, and we couldn't because we had an outstanding LOMA from FEMA.
Thanks for the reminder.
So, yeah,
Understood.
I just, because it's an inconvenience for
Yeah.
us too, and we're not
Right.
trying to find a workaround with a variance at all. And I hear what you're saying, and I think we talked about this last time. For me to say, like, there's truly, like, a hardship, I think is probably a hard argument, knowing that there's an alternative. It's just a bad alternative. And honestly, my project aside, just purely as a resident who likes old houses and an interior designer who's committed to saving them, I think it's a bad precedent to just say, well, you have buildable land, let's build. Like that, to me, that's what is wrong with all the new construction and the McMansions and like, that's what has character about old houses, is that they didn't build to every possible setback.
Yeah.
And so I just, that's my project aside, it's just a belief that I have, and I know you guys have different priorities, and you have to be careful about what you say yes to, because then someone else asks for the same thing, and I understand, but just as someone who loves old houses, I think it's like, it's a tough situation to say that, like, the historical precedent of the architecture is insignificant.
No, nobody denies that. We love the fact that you guys are doing it, and we wish more people would do it. I guess I put myself, I'm your neighbor to the north. This, I'm sorry the beech tree is there, but this would be preferable, at least to me, if I'm there, that neighbor to the north. You're coming down a little bit versus having this big projectile coming right to the street.
So if we project forward, we would have to revise our curb cut. Is that an issue? Because where the curb cut is now, to my husband's point, you wouldn't be able to make the turn into the garage.
Oh, I guess I was thinking you were still keeping, this would still keep the garage front facing.
Yes.
Yes.
Just bumping it out.
Yes, me too.
to keep-
Yes,
to
but it's
add
just
some more
the
space.
turn of the curb cut, we just would have to shift to the side. But I've never done that before. I don't know if that's an ordeal.
I think the tough situation we have is giving you guidance without seeing the information.
Yeah.
What's the curve? Do people, one of the first suggestions was to take the proposed two-car garage and make it 2.5 and move it closer to the street. I personally have a little reservation on that one, but before because we should give some guidance, do other people have thoughts on taking the garage as proposed and moving it a little closer to the street, making it 2+?
Well, you're going to be kind
Doesn't
of
that get us
where you
back to what the three-car version was, or close to
I
it?
just want to.
It's kind of halfway between the two.
Halfway
Yeah,
between.
if we're going to dispel that, I think we
kind
should
of closer to where you were.
send them with that guidance to not go that direction. Bridget, do you have an opinion?
You know, I missed the last meeting they were at, but I did drive by the house, and I was prepared for that meeting because it was a last-minute thing that I missed for. But now I don't really know what we're talking about.
Okay.
Because we don't have the pictures and we don't know what the plan is.
Okay.
So I thought that Rob's idea of pulling it forward a little bit, the 8 feet sounded good, because I do think it sort of cut into the neighbor's sight line the way it was originally planned. Yeah, so that sounds pretty good to me. I don't know if the 2.5 goes to the setback of the side yard, and if
It's
that's a
back to the
problem.
issue of the setback from the
Exactly.
road.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I know that before the last meeting, I did think that it was a bit much to pull it forward, and it sounds like that's what everybody said, and that's where we are now.
David, what about moving the curb cut? Is that, what's involved with that decision-making?
Given the location of the lot on the block, that shouldn't be an issue.
It just requires engineering review. Right. And a permit.
Well, maybe that is the route to the guidance that we could provide
Yeah.
at this point.
And do we go back through the recommending board if that's the route that we take?
So you don't need to go back through the recommending board so long as what's ultimately being voted on is not more than or in addition to something that the ZBA already considered. In other words, when we gave notice of that public hearing, we identified the requested relief. If what's ultimately being approved is less relief, then that's okay. But if there's new relief that's necessary, like a side yard setback that wasn't requested before, then that would need another public hearing.
Okay.
Public hearing at the ZBA, or can we bring that back here?
ZBA would be the traditional way to do it.
Is there a non-traditional way to do it, to
Yeah,
bring it here?
can we just get it done?
You guys sick of me yet?
No, not at all, not at all.
Just trying to help.
Thank you.
Give that some thought.
We'll give that some
We'll give that some thought. Maybe we
I
can,
do think, though, just belts and suspenders, if we're going to continue this, we should continue it to a date certain. That's a good due process issue, just
A
to have
date
a date certain.
certain of a
Come back here,
ZBA
to come
meeting?
back here. We can if it needs to go to the ZBA, we can always not bring it back here, but if it comes back here and we figure out a way to do that,
okay.
due process-wise, it would be good to have a date certain.
And what meeting would that be?
January 7th or the 21st.
The 7th? If Jimmy can draw it fast enough.
But for the 7th, we're going to need materials by next week.
23rd.
Great. Sounds
It
good.
is Christmas, yeah.
But directionally, I think she's looking, I mean, I'm not sure how much guidance we can give.
No, you
I
did.
guess
I
from
mean,
my
we just
point of
kinda
view,
did- we
I
kinda
think
did.
we're all sitting here, we're uncomfortable, I guess I'll speak for myself. I'm uncomfortable with a variance where it's sitting today.
Yeah.
Anything that significantly reduces the variance is what I could get behind.
Okay.
I mean,
And
so-
makes it
I know that's-
usable.
I'm not giving design advice here, just.
No, I hear you.
where I'm going.
All right, so we're going to continue this to January 7th?
That's fine.
Is
And
that-
so we will have it replatted.
January 21st.
21st.
7th.
January 21st is what he said.
I have everything. I can put it in CAD. It's fine.
21st or 7th?
7th.
7th?
You guys are fine if I draw it and resubmit it, right? You don't need it from my architect.
It needs to be to scale.
Yeah. I can put it in CAD. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll reconvene on the 7th.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ooh.
Okay. Let's move on to item B, ordinance number M19-2024, granting variations from the Winnetka zoning ordinance to allow the construction of a detached garage within the R3 single-family residential district, and this is 630 Walden. This is being proposed for introduction, possible adoption. Tonight, the council will consider a request to allow construction of a detached garage to the existing residence, and Community Development Director David Schoen is back to review this agenda item.
Yes, so on slide 7 of what I passed out earlier, so the site is located on the northwest corner of Walden Road and Pine Street. It's zoned R3 single-family residential and is bordered by R3 to the northwest and east and R5 to the south. The house is legally non-conforming in that it slightly encroaches into the required corner yard setback along the south by a foot. Moving to slide 8, has some current photos of the front facade of the house, which faces the east towards Walden. There's an attached one-car garage. And then the other images of the rear facade of the house facing west with the backyard in view. The proposed detached garage would be located in the southwest portion of the property with access off Pine. The applicant is proposing and wanting to preserve a large mature oak tree, which you can see in the image on the right. Moving on to slide 9, the variation being requested is to construct a detached garage, which is highlighted in yellow on that slide. It would be set back 17 feet from the south property line along Pine Street and 6 feet from the west property line. On slide 10, it is a site plan, once again, showing the location of the proposed garage. The garage needs 3 forms of zoning relief. At 17 feet, it represents an encroachment of about 5.5 feet in the required front yard, which is 22.5 feet. Or I should say the corner yard, not the front yard. So any building is supposed to be set back that 22.5 feet. It also would encroach 3 feet into the required 20-foot setback for detached garages. So detached garages from a corner yard lot line are supposed to be set back 20 feet. So at 17 feet, it's short by 3 feet. And also an accessory structure is to be no closer to the street than the principal structure, in this instance, the home. In this instance, the garage is about 4.5 feet closer to the lot line along Pine Street. As I mentioned, the location is primarily due to the applicant wanting to preserve the large oak tree on the property. So we've gathered some additional information since the ZBA meeting. The trunk of this oak tree is about 17 feet from the garage footprint. The village forester has opined that construction activity, that means building, overdig, equipment passage, should be no closer than 14 feet from the tree. Ideally, you want to have it 22 feet from the critical root zone, but there is an area where the forester feels comfortable locating there. Though construction activity between that 14 feet distance minimum and the 22-foot, in this instance, critical root zone could lead to some decline in the tree's well-being, but it's difficult to predict if and how much that might be. Moving on to slide 11, it just contains some architectural plans showing the proposed garage's dimensions and appearance. And then moving on to slide 12, at a special meeting of the ZBA on November 18th, they considered the applicant's request. 2 public comments were received prior to the meeting and are included in your packet. The board's discussion focused primarily on the applicant's stated goal to preserve the large oak tree, as well as any potential impacts on traffic, given the new proposed driveway. Ultimately, the board unanimously recommended approval of the requested variations. So given the ZBA's recommendation was unanimous, we placed it on your agenda as both your ability to consider introduction and adoption of the ordinance. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for David? Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Okay, hang on one sec. Any questions for David before we?
I know that one of the things that was discussed in response, I think, to, or that was requested in one of the letters from the neighbors was landscaping and to make the garage facing Pine, since it would be the only garage facing Pine, look better. Was there any landscaping or anything planned? for the garage area?
There's no specific landscaping plan proposed currently.
Okay.
Okay, I just want to confirm, so there's no issue with the west setback?
Correct.
Okay.
Did the neighbor to the west have any communication with the village?
Not with the village.
Okay, okay. What about the fire hydrant that's out on the Parkway area?
They would have to relocate that if it's in the, away from the location of the driveway.
So the resident would have
They
that
would be
relocated?
responsible
Yeah,
for
okay,
that cost of
got it.
relocating.
Okay, okay. With the,
Well, I have one more question.
go ahead, Britt.
It sounded like everybody was asking about a stop sign being, it sounds like some of the neighbors requested a stop sign if there was going to be the driveway coming out onto Pine, and that the homeowner was in favor of that as well. I'm just not sure. I know that putting stop signs in requires a lot of thought and purposefulness in the village. Is that something that we are considering?
I'm only aware of one person asking about a stop sign, so, and we haven't pursued that further. We would have to, if the council's interested in that, we would have to look at, have the village engineer look at that from a traffic perspective. At this point, he hasn't said that there would be the need for a stop sign at this intersection because of the location of the driveway. But if the council's interested in us exploring that, we can. But that, yeah, I mean, if your approval is dependent upon a stop sign going there, I guess we would have to have him do his analysis before you make a decision on this request.
Mine is not dependent on that. It is just a question because people raised concerns.
any other, Bridget, for David?
The landscape, I mean, the neighbor that's going to be
We'll-
impacted, I'd like to hear when the resident.
Yeah, we'll
comes
bring
up.
the homeowner up. Kim, anything for David?
I guess I have a couple questions for the resident.
Question, David, on the detached garages, are you aware, are they typically doing like a thickened slab, or is it like a full foundation for the garage?
I'm not aware of what they're proposing.
Okay,
The slab.
okay, thank you.
Okay, why don't, you want to come on up and tell us about this garage?
Good evening, I'm Healy Rice, I'm the architect for the project, and I'm here with Terry Heath, who's the homeowner. As we kind of outlined in the proposal, the existing home has a one-car attached garage that faces Walden, but at some point that was remodeled and it's really not deep enough to even put a car in, so really there's no garage on the property. And so when we first considered options, there really isn't any other location in the front yard or accessing off Walden, and so looking at Pine as the logical option, and being a corner lot, obviously it becomes a little more of a challenge. The rear of the lot has this large tree in it, and we did engage an arborist to confirm what we had asked for was logical and made sense with regard to the size of the tree and the drip line, and not wanting to impact the tree as well as to maximize the backyard. So the location that we are requesting is slightly closer to Pine than is permitted, as was outlined, and really the tree is the main driver in its location. The landscaping, there will be work done. I don't have a specific plan to say, yes, it's going to be, 7 arborvitae or something like that yet, but did a tree fall? Yeah, I was going to say that you can see the fence is damaged right now. There was another tree that fell in that area, so the homeowner is looking at potentially updating the patio area and things that would be in conjunction with this work, but we haven't gotten to that point yet, knowing that this was conditional. But certainly the intent is to properly landscape and have the garage look pretty facing the street. Obviously, there's a lot of driveways from Pine Street that access off farther down on this, so this is not the only driveway on Pine that exists. We are certainly positive if the village wants to consider a stop sign there, that would not be objectionable to us at all. But we did talk with engineering, that was the first step to verify that they would permit a driveway coming out, and they approved that, so that we did take that step as well.
Questions?
Would you have to back out? Is there, or can you,
You would have to back out, correct?
so you
yes.
couldn't back in, turn around and go out? You have to back on the Pine?
Right, the parkway is probably 17 or 18 feet there, so there is about 35 feet between the street and the new garage, even at the proposed location. But we didn't propose a turnaround just because we've only got 17 feet to play with as far as pulling in or out. But it is fairly open there.
Okay.
I'm looking at this, obviously, this will be a little more prominent because it's right there on Pine. It looks like on the elevation, this is siding with just sort of very simple garage doors. Is it going to be brick to match the house with perhaps?
It'll be, we're debating one of two things. Either at the facade facing the street would be brick to match the house, or potentially a brick knee wall. There's a sunroom that faces the back that has a brick knee wall, and then siding above it. But it will be a combination of brick and siding.
Okay, and then also, again, perhaps, are there going to be some windows on the west side so
Yes.
that the?
Yes.
Okay, so it looks a little more like a pretty little building
Correct.
instead of.
Yes.
Yeah, I know you do lovely work.
No, it was just, it was a kind of a quick, simple,
Yeah.
just
And this
for-
is just a sidebar. I know, when I look at the photograph for, or I see what the current garage is, I see that there's a garage and then a secondary area, but the full driveway, do you have any thought of narrowing the driveway to take a little impermeable surface away for that one-car garage that's existing?
Oh, on the front?
Yeah.
On the Walden side?
Just sort of, because there'll be a lot of pavement with two driveways. So just,
You want to come up here? Yeah, so, to speak, because you're on TV.
So I'm Terry Heath, and owner. No, that never even crossed our mind. I mean, we still will probably sometimes pull into the driveway, especially in the summertime. You know, in the winters when it's really nice to have a garage and not have to scrape off the windshield. So, no, we hadn't thought about messing with the driveway.
We are fully compliant in terms of the impervious.
Oh, I
and-
realized
yeah,
that to me,
yeah,
I was
yeah.
just curious as a way to sort of take down the impermeable surface a little bit. That would be an option. Okay, thank you. That's all I had for now.
Sure. No questions? The only questions I had, and it related to what I thought was a fairly considerate letter from a neighbor across the way that went to the zoning board. And we're always interested in what neighbors have to say, and they kind of got to the point, Kim, and landscaping and the look of this garage. Does it look like just a Stanley garage or something like that, or is it
No, it's-
more in keeping with the home? And so, I don't know, I mean, I'd be a little concerned, I guess, if it turned out to be something that was just like a garage plopped down there that was not in keeping with the home and the neighborhood and so on, because I understand where those neighbors across the way, you know, they're now
looking at
looking
it.
into a yard, and now they're gonna be looking into two garage door bays. And so I guess I don't have a real good sense right now of what this garage is gonna look like in terms of the quality of the construction
And the landscaping, too.
and the landscaping and just how you're gonna make it fit in and be not a neighborhood eyesore, but, you know, maybe not an addition, but something that fits in with the quality of that street.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're willing to consider brick, certainly. You know, it's just a cost impact as well, but the house is brick, obviously, that would be our first choice.
Yeah.
And to work the brick in, you know, I guess I mean, if that's what would help you say yes, I think we can certainly work with that. Mhm.
Well, it would help me.
Okay, we can do the brick, we can do the Z brick. Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah, so
that's fine.
it's brick consistent with the home. and-
Yes. Mhm.
So how do we do that, David, in terms of conditioning and approval?
So again, what would you be, what is the condition you would like to see? And then
I think we want to see
the entire garage in brick? The front facade, which she presented two options, so I don't know which option.
I thought the entire garage looked like a little
I think the front facade and brick, especially when the garage is sticking out, is going to look worse than if it were no brick.
I agree. I'd rather, I mean, I think we would work and do a brick garage. It'll probably be a Z brick, so it'll be, you know, the brick, kind of the thin brick, but it'll match the house, so, yeah.
So if that's the condition, that can be a condition to approval, to add that to the ordinance.
Okay. Would that be something that we could introduce and adopt with that condition?
Yes.
Or would you just introduce?
You could.
Okay. Is there any appetite to waive introduction on this?
I'm okay with that.
Okay with it.
Okay, Kirk?
I'm okay.
You're okay with waiving introduction?
Yes.
Okay. So let me get to the script here. All right, so if someone could craft a motion with the contingent brick quality of the structure?
You want me to say the motion? and then-
Yes, why don't you say the motion? Peter?
So the motion would be to, well, first you're going to do waiving.
Yes.
So
All right,
waive
do I have a
first.
motion to waive introduction of ordinance M 19/2024?
So moved.
Second.
That's a voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
All right, now, so it would be a motion to adopt ordinance M 19/2024 and to include a new condition that the garage be constructed of brick material.
A brick veneer.
Brick veneer,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Similar to the design of current house.
Similar to the design of the current house.
Fine.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's a roll call vote?
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes?
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Great, thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Well handled.
Thank you, Peter. All right, we're going to move on to item C, ordinance number M 20/2024, granting variations from the Winnetka zoning ordinance and a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a new commercial building within the C2 General Retail Commercial District. This is located at 933 Green Bay Road. This is being considered for introduction and possible adoption. Tonight, council will consider a request by the applicant proposing demolition of more than 50% of the existing building floor area and to construct an addition considered as a new one-story commercial building. And once again, Community Development Director David Schoen is here to review.
Yes, so I'm on slide 13. And there are 4 variations before you. 3 really relate to the existing portion of the building, and then the 4th because of the new portion of the building, the parking. So the setbacks and parking variations. So on slide 14, I think you may be familiar with this site. It's right to the north of the Walgreens parking lot. I think everyone knows the Walgreens parking lot in Hubbard Woods. The property is zoned C2 commercial and is surrounded by the same. And then the front 50 feet along Green Bay is also zoned the commercial overlay district. Given the lot is 7,500 square feet, it's less than 10,000 square feet. Therefore, redevelopment of the site does not require approval of a plan development, nor may the applicant request the plan development. Thus, the variations before you. On slide 15, you see a photo of the existing 2-story building on the left. It will be removed while the existing 1-story building towards the rear of the site would remain and be extensively remodeled. As Trustee Dearborn said, given the extent of the demolition, we're considering the entire building a new building, and therefore it needs to comply with current zoning. The site, though, currently has a driveway on Green Bay Road, which I'll talk about in a moment. The applicant is eliminating. On slide 16, you see the site plan. The proposed building would have 2 commercial spaces. The space immediately adjacent to Green Bay Road, the applicant has identified would be occupied by Visual Comfort and Company, which is a lighting store. The rear space which is the Barrel Truss Building, would be remodeled for a second tenant, Winnetka Wellness, which is a medical office. As you can see with the site plan, that rear space would be accessed by a paver walkway from Green Bay Road along the south side of the building. Both of these uses that the applicant is planning to locate in the building are allowed by right. Neither of them, given where they're located in the building, requires special use permit approval. The new portion of the building being constructed along Green Bay Road is going to be 8 feet from the south property line from the Walgreens parking lot, which will allow a walkway. The walkway will be approximately 5 feet in width and landscaping on both sides. Towards the center of the site, you can see there's a little courtyard. As I said, they plan to close the curb cut. Consequently, no off-street parking would be provided. So the setback variations that are necessary for the project. In commercial districts, buildings cannot be set back more than 3 feet from the front property line. So in this instance, from Green Bay Road. A portion of the building, that rear portion that is remaining, is 99 feet from the west property line along Green Bay Road. That's the red arrow on the image on the slide you're looking at on page 17. So of the 48 feet of frontage, 8 feet of the frontage would not comply with this front yard setback. The purpose of this maximum front yard setback is to create a more consistent storefront wall as one walks along the street level of a commercial district. Having building setback too far can break up this continuity. However, there may be instances where varying from this requirement may not have a negative impact given the design of the development. In terms of the side yard setback variations, a side yard is not required, but when one is provided, it has to be at least 3 feet to provide space between the buildings. The portions of the existing building or building wall that are to remain require a variation from this requirement. And then the last requirement is a rear yard setback is required of 10 feet. The existing building that is to remain is also legally non-conforming with regard to this setback and provides little to no setback. Thus, the proposal requires a rear yard setback variation. Moving to slide 18. So the zoning ordinance requires that the newly constructed portion of the building provide off-street parking. It's explained further in the staff report. I'm just going to say that in this instance, 6 off-street parking spaces would be required for the 3,200 square feet of additional or of new commercial space. They're not proposing to include any parking on site. Therefore, a variation is required. As the council considers this request, you may wish to take into consideration the initiative identified in the village's comprehensive plan, which is on that slide. And the whole idea is we're trying to create a pedestrian-oriented business district. And so there's the provision of parking in these business districts is a balance between private lots and public lots. So consistent with this initiative, customer parking is provided in Hubbard Woods on street, in surface lots, as well as the parking deck. So this supports the village's desire to have commercial districts with a traditional design and pedestrian-friendly streetscape. Moving on to slide 19, the applicant has provided renderings of what the proposed building would look like. And the applicant can elaborate on the details of the design. And then on slide 20, there are also additional renderings. And then slide 21, the Design Review Board reviewed this application at 2 meetings. At the first meeting, the board had comments on the design detail. They thought there could be some more and some changes to it. In the packet, you have images of what was presented at that meeting. The applicant came back with a revised design, changed the color of the brick, added more detail, and the Design Review Board then unanimously recommended approval. Then the ZBA also has considered the request for the variations. Their discussion focused mainly on the parking variation request. And the board recognized that it's not desirable to have the pedestrian character of the commercial district disturbed with parking on each private lot. Also, given this lot only has access from Green Bay Road, it doesn't have access, there's a building between it and the alley or Tower Court, that any access to provide parking on site for this lot would need to come off Green Bay Road, and didn't feel that was appropriate for the pedestrian character we're trying to create in our district. So they ultimately recommended approval of all of the variations. And then just lastly, the Historic Preservation Commission had to review the demolition because more than 50% of the existing structure on the site was going to be demolished, and they found that the building lacks significance and therefore allowed the demolition to proceed without delay. So again, given that the ZBA and the Design Review Board unanimously recommended approval, we place this item on your agenda so that if you wish, you could consider introduction and adoption this evening. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for David?
A couple. The, how much, the height of the building to the north, how much bigger is this building, taller than this building than that one? Am I missing that? Is this in line with the Walgreens height? I'm just trying to figure out, I'm just looking at,
Yeah, it wouldn't be as tall as the Walgreens building.
Hi, thank
Hey.
you, David. Mitch Goltz, resident and of Glencoe and applicant here. So happy to answer your questions. It may be part of the report and some of the exhibits. The building to the south, the Walgreens is a 2-story building, which is much taller than this, and the building to the north, the Kyoto building, is primarily a 2-story building.
Yeah.
We share a wall, so this will be a shorter building than both of those because it is currently a 2-story building. Now the ceiling height on the ground floor of our building will be taller than the current ceiling height, but overall will be several feet shorter than the current structure.
okay. As I'm looking at these 2 different buildings, you want them to look distinctly different, I assume, because it looks like there's different brick colors and...
Yeah, I mean, this is indicated in the report. This is, we develop a lot of properties. This one's more of the unique one where it doesn't have alley access.
Right.
We tried to retrofit the building. It's past its useful life. So we are reusing the back building and completely renovating it. And the new building, the front, will have a similar type of brick character. So it will not be the same brick, but we do plan on keeping it as consistent as possible. So there will be some differences, clearly, as a 100-year-old building and a new building, but they'll both be masonry. And there's a material board up here.
That's, I'd love
to
this,
extent.
'cause that's what was my concern, which is we spent so much time on the JP Morgan building, Chase building, that making sure it's...
The aluminum piece fell off of the building. It won't fall off the building.
So trustee Apatow, on page 176 of
Yeah.
of the packet.
Yep.
Oh, you found it.
I do want to just note for the record, as part of the application, we have worked and gotten consent from the Walgreens and the Walgreens owner to tear down the existing fence, which is their, wood fence
Parking, yeah.
against the parking, as you all know. So we're going to remove that and install a new wrought iron fence on our property, which will do a couple things. It will open up visibility to what will be a very pretty courtyard. Two, will provide a little bit more parking grace for the customers at Walgreens. And will also just look a heck of a lot better than what's there now.
How many employees are going to be manning that? I mean, when you said there's 6, is that customer or is that for employee parking? 6 that it requires?
Six is what was required by code. From an employee standpoint, there's a handful of people there at a given time. It's not a high. They do a lot of volume sales-wise, but it's more of the appointment only and people coming in just to buy. But it's a beautiful layout. There's a layout of their space. The back user, Winnetka Wellness, has a facility like this in downtown Lake Forest, right next to Sophia Steak, called Forest Lounge. To those who venture up that way, so it's a private wellness. Some of the items they have are outlined in the report, but it'll be a really nice adaptive reuse and new construction. It will make the street look a lot better, removing that curb cut that really just doesn't fit. So we're really excited as a resident and a developer to see this type of change here. So hopefully you guys see the same thing.
Any other questions for David or the applicant? Is there any public comment on this issue? No public comment? Okay.
I just have one more question about the signage.
Okay.
Which doesn't look like much we've had kind of signage.
Did the DRB go through signage?
Did they talk specifically about that?
They presented the signage for illustrative purposes. They still have to go back to get the tenants will have to go back and get approval for signage. In terms of what's shown on the rendering, that type of sign would be allowed, and that size of sign would be allowed by our sign code. In terms of
I'm just trying to see if there's anything kind of more the signage. I'm not sure if I see anything like that in the village. Do we have anything?
What does Serena and Lily have? Don't they have similar signage?
I'm trying to think who may be, again, not as large. The Shade Store has similar type of signage. Individual channel letter signs.
Material
Those are actually
Possessions, is that-
backlit.
Yeah, material possessions.
Material Possessions, don't they have the letters across the
Yeah, they do
side?
too.
They do.
I
See,
mean,
we
the
look at these
signage.
things every day.
Yeah, the signage, I mean, to David's point, was there for illustrative reasons. What they show does comply with village code. We wanted to put that on there for the design review board, so they had some context for, the face of what it looks like with the signage. So the tenant in the rear will have likely a reclaimed wood sign that would be, on our property, that would be over the entrance, over the 8-foot walkway, which is on one of the pages. I don't know what page, but that 163 is the tenant in the rear signage, and that tenant will also have signage allowance on the front of their facade, which will be about 100 feet off the street.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, I think this
Can we
is-
bring it up back here and get people's thoughts? And
Yeah, I think this is great. I'm excited about the fact, I'm not troubled about the 6 parking spots because and going back to the pedestrian nature we're hoping to achieve, I hope people will park and go to Serena Lily and Material Possessions and all the other design shops and not expect a spot at a specific store. So, and obviously the Killian building has been here a long time and has been a fixture in Winnetka, but it's certainly, it's time to replace it with
Time to
something
go.
exciting like
Yeah.
what you've designed here.
Thank you.
So,
And I will note for the record that the family who
Yeah, the
owns the
Bakers
Killian,
have
they're
been-
bakers, they're residents of Winnetka. They've been at most of their meetings. They've agreed, as I have, that anything in the building that's of value to the Historic Society, they would they're going to, donate it. There's some old equipment and whatnot. Not much is in there. There's really nothing of architectural significance in the building. It's more the story of the family and the name, but they're going to donate some things to the Historical Society.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Terrific, terrific. Well,
I think it's a great solution, especially creative considering the rear building and opening that up. So I'm in favor of this.
okay.
Yeah.
Is there an appetite for waiving introduction on this?
I'm fine with that.
Yep, okay. All right, hang on one second. Do I have a motion to waive introduction of ordinance M 20/2024?
So moved.
Second.
That's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And now may I have a motion to adopt ordinance number M 2024?
So moved.
Second,
And Rob, that's a roll call vote.
Trustee Albinson.
Yes.
Trustee Handler.
yes,
Trustee Orsic.
Yes.
Apitoff.
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
luck.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we're plowing through this, and we're going to go to item D, ordinance M 22/2024, Cook County Paid Leave Opt-out Ordinance for Taxing Bodies, and this is being considered for introduction and possible adoption. New Trier High School, Winnetka School District 36, and the Winnetka Park District contacted the village manager's office requesting the use of the village's home rule authority to exclude them from the Cook County Paid Leave Ordinance in efforts to reduce administrative burdens. Our village manager, Rob Bahan, will review this item.
Thank you, Trustee Dearborn. Your intro summed it up pretty succinctly, but for context, back in November of 2023, the village opted out with the passage of ordinance M17/2023 of the State Paid Leave for All Workers Act, and then by taking that action, we also effectively opted out of the subsequent county paid leave ordinance. In March of '24, the Cook County Board of Commissioners adopted an amendment to temporarily exempt schools and parks from complying with their ordinance until January 1st of 2025, and then the county did not take any action to make that exemption permanent, even though the state act did. So during the week, last week, I heard from New Trier High School and then subsequently from District 36 and the Park District requesting that we use our home rule authority to opt them out of the county's paid leave ordinance, and which made sense to us. Just mainly due to the administrative burden, and in many respects, you saw in the school submittals that their benefits exceed or are as good or as exceed what the county ordinance would require. So with that, that's the ordinance that's in front of you for this evening.
Any questions for Rob on this?
No legal entanglements.
No legal, good. Any public comment? Anyone in the public want to comment on this? No? Okay. We'll bring it back here. Is there, again, an appetite to waive introduction of this item? Okay, all right. Do I have a motion to waive introduction of ordinance M22/2024?
So moved.
second,
That's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed? Now, may I have a motion to adopt ordinance M22/2024?
So moved.
Second.
And that is a roll call vote.
Trustee Apitoff?
Yes.
Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
yes,
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes. Okay, good, thank you. So we're moving on to old business. No old business. I don't believe there's any new business. There are no appointments, there's no closed session, and we move on to an adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
And that's a voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed? We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy holidays to everybody.
Yeah.
Enjoy.